Alright, so the idea is to create two scenes and overlap them together with a mask to create a portal type of effect. Okay, so let's create our small forest scene first, and I'm going to use the M-Tree add-on for trees. I'll put a link in the description to download this add-on, and also this add-on works best with Blender 3.0 version. So if you go to Blender download page, you can go to previous versions, and every version of Blender is available here. You can download Blender 3.0 from here. Once you have downloaded the add-on, go to Edit, Preferences, Install, and install the zip file. Now let's go to M-Tree editor, click on New, and Shift A and add a tree mesher. Now let's add a trunk. Plug the tree output to tree and just refresh the seed value to get the trunk. I have also created a detailed video on M-Tree editor. You can check out, I'll put a link in the description. So now let's add a branch node. Plug the tree output from trunk to branch. So here are the branches. Let's reduce the number of branches from density and also the length. Play with the settings, and once you are happy with the shape, just click on Add Leaves, and it will add a leaf modifier here in the modifier stack. So here you can change the settings for the leaf like size, density, and randomness. For the material, I am using the BlenderKit add-on. So in this add-on, you select the material and search for bark, and you get all these bark materials. Select your tree and click any of these to get downloaded and applied to your tree. To make variations of this tree, just select it, Shift D to duplicate it, and continue editing the base one. So in the node tree editor, I can just choose a random seed for both, or just modify the trunk shape with the start radius and height. So once you are done with the variations of the tree, select them all and put them in a new collection. So here I have put them in a tree collection. And now let's create the ground. So Shift A, add a plane, scale it up, Control A and apply scale. Let's subdivide it a few times. And also add a subdivision modifier. Now let's add a displace modifier. Click on New, and in texture settings, go to Type and select Clouds. Shade Smooth. Now you can increase the scale to get the desired result, and also play with the strength, how much variation you want in the ground. Now for the ground, again I'll use the Blender Kit. In the Materials tab, let's search ground. Select your ground plane and click any of these materials to get it applied. When you download this material and apply it to your object, it automatically creates a UV map. So if you select the ground and go to the object data properties, in UV maps you can find a auto map. You can use this or you can delete it and use your original UV map. Go to shading and see how this texture is mapped onto your object. So this texture ground material is using the generated output. So if the scale is off, you can just select the scale from this mapping node and increase or decrease it. Now let's distribute these trees onto the ground using a geometry node editor. So go to geometry node editor, select the ground, click on new. Now in the geometry node editor, shift A to add a distribute point on faces node. Also add a instance on point node. Plug the geometry to mesh and plug the point to point. Shift A and add another join geometry node. Plug the instance to join geometry node. Now let's drag the trees collection inside our editor. Now, before plugging the geometry to the instance node, let's decrease the density because this density may freeze your system. So in the distribute point on faces node, select Poisson disk. It gives you an option of minimum distance and decrease the density, maybe about 0.1. We'll increase it later, and also the density factor. Now plug the geometry to instance. So select separate children, reset children, and also select pick instance. So now you can increase the density slowly and the density factor. Let's randomize the rotation and scale. So shift A, add a random value node, set it to vector, plug the minimum of x and y to 0 and maximum of x and y to 0 as well, because we want to rotate only in z. Plug this vector to rotation and increase the z value. Okay, now let's set up our camera. So find a good composition at some angle and press Ctrl Alt 0 to set the camera at that position. Once you have set your camera, you can select the distribute point on faces node and change the seed to get different variations as per your liking. So here I have finalized this ground. I have also added some rocks. So again, if you go to BlenderKit and in models, search for rock, and you can find many free rock assets. You can use these in your scene. So I have added these rocks in its separate collection, and in the geometry node editor with the same distribution method, I have distributed these rocks. This is my camera composition. Now let's add a point of focus in the center. So shift A, add a plane. Let's rotate it and move it into position. So this is going to be my portal. and let's isolate it, Shift H. Now I only need the outer edges of this, so I'll select it and go to Object, Convert to Curve, and in the setting of this curve we can make it 3D with this depth option in the bevel, increase it and add some resolution, shade smooth. Now let's give it a emission material. So select, go to material, new, and in surface select emission, give it a color and increase the strength. Now let's add a basic point light to our scene. So I'm going to use EV for rendering. So select the viewport shading. So for now there's no lighting in our scene. So Shift A and add a point light. Move it behind our door. And let's give it the same color as we have given to our door. So select the door. In material, hover over the color and just Control C. Select your point light and again hover over the color and Control V to paste it. Now increase the power. Press 0 to show the camera view. Now in the shading tab, let's edit the world setting. So select world and select the color of the background and bring it down to completely black. Now we can increase the power of the light even more, something like 5000. Now let's add fog to our scene. So Shift A and add a cube. Scale it up so it fills the environment. Control A and apply scale. Now go to shading. Click on new to add a new material. Delete the principal BSDF and Shift A to add a principal volume. Plug the volume to volume and reduce the density to be about 0.01. Now let's give our fog a 3D variation. So again Shift A to add a noise texture and let's also add a color ramp. Plug the color to factor and this color to density. Now let's bring this black value down and also this white close to black. It gives a variation in the fog. Now to reduce the density, select this white and bring it down. Select the scale, increase or decrease it. Play with these settings to get the lighting correct. Now let's animate our camera. So select the camera and on the first frame, press I and select location and rotation to add a keyframe. And I'm using 192 frames. So select the N to be 192 and go to your last frame. Now we want to zoom the camera out of this portal. So for that, go to the options and in view, select lock camera to view. Now with control middle mouse drag, just zoom your camera inside the portal. Something like this. And again press I, location and rotation to insert another keyframe. Now you can press play to see the animation. Let's edit it a bit more. So go to graph editor, and here you can see all the XYZ values that we have added the keyframes to. Select all these, right click, and in interpolation mode select linear. So the movement is linear now. If you press play, you can see. Now let's add a little bit of noise to our movement. So I'm going to add noise in linear direction and a little bit of rotation in the X direction. So select the Z location. So we can also check this if we go to item and select the Z location. So this is your up and down. So what you can do is, while you have selected the Z location, go to modifier and add a noise modifier. So it adds a noise. Scale it up and press play to check if you like this. You can play with these values like strength, decrease the strength, offset, and again scale as per your liking. Similarly, we'll select the rotation. So I want this rotation. You can check it again in the rotation. So Y is the rotation value. So again go to Y Euler rotation, add modifier, noise, bring the strength down, scale up, and set as per your liking. Now let's create our second scene, the desert scene. So I'm going to use the same camera movement. So select your camera and also select the portal gate just for the reference. So shift select this and Control C to copy it. Let's create another file and Control V. So again, you can delete your primary camera here and you can check the existing camera working. Now let's create the basic desert. So again, Shift A, add a plane, scale it up. As per your camera setting, scale it in the X direction. Control A and apply the scale. Now in the edit mode, add some subdivisions and also add a subdivision surface modifier. Now let's add a displacement modifier. Click on new, go to settings and in type select Voronoi. Shade smooth. Just to match the proper scale, let's scale it in Y as well. Control A, apply scale. Now in the Voronoi setting, select the size and increase it. And in the setting of the displacement modifier, increase the strength. Whenever you are dragging the value of any socket, you can press Shift and drag so that the value increases or decreases very slowly. You may increase the subdivision level even more to refine the shape. Now again, for the material of this desert, I'm going to use the Blender kit. So select the material and search for sand. And just click on your ground and select one of this material. It will be downloaded and applied. And again, it creates a automatic UV. So I'm gonna just delete this auto UV map. This is how it looks. Now let's set it according to our camera position, the maximum behind the camera. So I'll select it and move it behind. Now let's create some lighting for our scene. So in shader editor, go to world setting. Now I'll be using a cloud HDRI. I have downloaded it from Polyheaven. So with your background selected, press Ctrl T, and in environment texture, select your HDRI image. Now with the mapping node, you can select the rotation of this image. Now as I will be using Eevee for rendering this scene, let's add a horizon on this image. So Shift A and add a gradient texture and add another color ramp. With the gradient texture selected, again press Ctrl T to add mapping and texture coordinate. Plug the color to factor. Now press Ctrl Shift and click on color ramp to see it in the background. Now let's move it as per our camera. So select the Y rotation and bring it near to the horizon. Clamp the black and white values. Now select the black color and make this color a little bit like horizon. So a gray color. Select the white color and this color will merge into our HDRI image. So I'll just select this color and click the alpha value and bring it down to 0. Control Shift and right click drag over to these two to create a mix node. And also plug the alpha of this color ramp to the factor of the mix node. Now again plug this background to the surface. And now you see this color ramp is merged with the HDRI image. If you want to enhance the color of the sky, you may also select this white color, add the alpha value a little bit and bring in the blue to add to the sky. And to increase the contrast, you can come to the render settings and in color management, select look to be high contrast or very high contrast. Alright, so this is my final scene. I have added 2 more volumes just to add a little bit of fog at the horizon. And now we can render it out in a 1920 by 1080p setting with a file format of FFmpeg from here. Before rendering, now we do not need this object, our door. So I'll just disable it in the render and also hide it here. So in the same format, I'll render out both of these scenes. So here is the final render of both. And now let's create a mask to merge these two together. Alright, so I'll create the mask from our first scene, this small forest scene. So if you see the scene setting, There's no tree coming in the path of the camera animation, so I do not need any tree. So I'll just select our ground plane, go to geometry editor and just remove this tree input. So now we only have our ground and rocks. And I also chose these rocks because one of this rock is coming in front of our door. So we need the mask with this rock. Now select our gate object and convert it to mesh. And I'm gonna fill the outer side of the camera. So I'll just select the center edges and press E to extrude and S to scale. Just check that the whole camera is filled. Now there are multiple ways to create this mask. We can use PNG file sequence for creating this mask. However, I am going to use a simple video file. For that, I need black and white objects to create this mask. So this outer will be our black object, and let's create a white object as well. So the center of this gate will be white. So select the center edge loop, press F to fill. Select this face, go to mesh, separate selection. Now let's create white value for this object. So select this, go to material, create a new material. Let's call it white. And we'll use simple emission shader for this. Now for the outer objects, select, create new, mask black, and again select emission, and this time select the color, make it completely black. Now I'm going to use the same black mask for this ground as well. So select the ground, apply the black mask material. Similarly, apply this same material to these rocks. So right now, this is how it looks. And we also do not need any lighting value in our scene. So just delete the lights. And also remove all the lighting from the world setting. So go to shading and delete all the shaders. So this is how it finally looks. And let's render it out again with the same settings, the FFmpeg file format. Alright, so now I have got all my 3 videos. So this is the masked one. Now let's edit these together. So in Blender, go to the video editing tab. Now in here, click on add and add a movie. First select your first scene, that is the jungle scene. Now add your second scene, that is the desert scene. And now let's add the mask. In the sequence editor, press N if you don't see this toolbar. So N will pop up this toolbar. Now in your sequencer, press N if you don't see this toolbar. So N will pop up this toolbar. Now select your desert strip, go to modifier and add a mask. In the mask setting, select your mask strip. Now right away you may not see the modification, but if you go to the strip setting and set it to alpha over, Select the mask, set this to alpha over as well, and play with the opacity, and you'll see the mask working. Now you can also enhance the quality of your strips. So let's duplicate the desert scene, bring it up, and in the modifier stack, add another color balance modifier, and you can play with these color settings. And finally, again, render it out as a FFmpeg file format. So this is how I created this scene, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.